over 15 years, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Back at it on the Saturday morning, just after we ended on the Friday night. We say good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. And for all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Alongside my good friend Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Dave, I'm a little under the weather. He might try and join us if he's feeling up to it. What are the odds that the same raccoon that bit Ezzy would also bite Dave? I mean, that has got to be astronomically rare that two people on the same show get bitten by the same raccoon. Unbelievable statistical anomaly at play that's affecting Dave M on this Saturday morning. Good to see Mr. Ginsburg is up and at it. I do like to say, as I must say, I like the new backdrop you got going on there with the Jets and Ducks 50-50 poster. I've seen it before, but I like how prominent it is displayed on the background there. You're bringing your A game. You're looking sharp.
No, I appreciate it. I've actually just, like, I'm at the same table here in my living room, but I just changed where I'm sitting, like where at the table I'm sitting, right? So as opposed to kind of facing my front window, now this is my kind of side window here. So I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm trying to, work on some things here at my house in St. James, right? Like I'm trying to tweak things, the background, the positioning, everything like that. But yeah, obviously it's only been 10 hours or so since we did the post-game show, but you didn't
get up to any trouble in those 10 hours, I hope?
No, I went to bed shortly after the post-game show. I was a good boy, Drew, because I knew I had to be up and early with my kids.
That's good.
But yeah, it was an exciting game yesterday. It didn't obviously start off too well for the Jets, but we had obviously the Stanley Klapka duel, and then we got treated to some goals. So it was a nice win for the Jets. Unfortunately, the Flames continue to lose, and they continue just to remain in the basement of the Western Conference standings. But, give them credit. They brought, I don't want to say they brought their A game,
right.
But they brought the fight. They didn't give up. They obviously made it a 1-goal game there in the third period. And the Jets were able to hang on, and Nemesnikov buried it with the empty netter. So I think there's some things that you don't like in that game, but you certainly like the power play and the fact that you got all those power plays, Drew. Just a reminder, the Jets had 8 power plays last night.
There's plenty of power play opportunities for both teams last night. We talked about that on the post-game show. Ezzy, it's interesting. I want to, look, the Jets win last night. The Jets record is 6-2. They've won 6 of their 8 games. All those wins have been in regulation. So it's hard to be too critical about how the Jets have started the season. Look, any of us, any Jets fan would have gladly taken 6-2 in their first 8. Every team, every player, every organization in this league would take a start like that without thinking twice about it. But when you look a little bit under the hood, the body's all dressed up nice and it's all shiny and it's all been scrubbed and it's performing well and the vroom, it makes people seem like it's going well. You look under the hood of the Winnipeg Jets, though. By the way, I know nothing about cars in case that wasn't perfectly evident there. And there's, I would suggest, a fair number of warning signs. So I want to start with that on this Saturday morning because we like to take the big picture. You know that. We're going to give Jets praise for their winning ways. No question about that. But at the same time, when you look under that hood, as I was mentioning, the team at 5-on-5 with the lowest expected goals for percentage in the entire NHL is the Winnipeg Jets. 37%. Is their 5-on-5 expected goals for percentage. That is bottom in the NHL. Not only is it bottom, it's about almost 5 percentage points below the 31st ranked team. You look at possession numbers for the Winnipeg Jets. And admittedly, the Jets have never been the strongest possession team in the NHL. But 32nd in terms of their percentage, in terms of their Corsi 4. Again, at 5-on-5. 40% is where they're at. They're next to illustrious company like the San Jose Sharks, and they're nearby the Chicago Blackhawks. these are not typically the teams that you want to be lumped together with. In fact, it's sort of interesting that all the bottom teams in the NHL, in terms of success, in terms of points, are above the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets are the only team that's towards the bottom in the league that is vastly outperforming what people would expect. So my question for you, Mr. Ginsburg, what is your level of concern that what the Winnipeg Jets have been doing for the first 8 games is eventually going to rear its ugly head and prevent them from having the same degree of success moving forward?
There's definitely some concern on my end, Drew, and it's mainly because of the strength of schedule, right? Yes, the Jets are 6-2, but guess what? The Pittsburgh Penguins are also 6-2. So I would take the 6-2 start with a bit of a grain of salt. We have to remind everybody here, when you're 8 games into the season, 9 games into the season,
small sample size, sure.
Exactly, it's a small sample size, but there's definitely concerns for me
about the time, though. It is 10% of the season. Sure,
but I mean, do you think Pittsburgh's making the playoffs, for example?
I do not know.
Yeah, so that's just the point I'm trying to make here, that the strength of schedule has been in the Jets' favor, and they've been winning the games, and so that's important. But we talked about last night. I thought the Taves, Chibrikov, Iafallo line was much better. Like, that's a line to me, and I realize that Taves has had a variety of teammates. He's played with Nyquist, he's played with Iafallo, he's played with Chibrikov. He's played with Tanner Pearson. Like, Taves has had a lot of line mates, and that's what we expected, right? Like, when Cole Perfetti went down with the injury, we kind of said, like, whoever basically plays the best with Jonathan Taves, and right now, obviously, Alex Iafallo is on his line, and right now, there's no reason for me to believe that won't stay together. Nemesnikov, Niederreiter, Nyquist, that line, I don't think that they were great last night. I think they were okay. And obviously the top line is driving the bus. But that to me is the bigger concern to me is, at times, the Scheifele line has been caved in the Jet zone, and they've been struggling in their own zone and not producing at 5-on-5. Through 8 games this season, the main reason why the Jets are 6-2 is because of their special teams. It's because the penalty kill up until yesterday had killed off whatever it was, 24, 25, 26 consecutive penalties, and the Jets are getting a power play goal or 2 every single game. So that's not sustainable. And when you start playing some better teams, and the Jets are going to play a better team because the Utah Mammoth are off to a good start this season, and they've got a lot of young offensive firepower. That's when, if the game is more of a 5-on-5 game, which obviously last night's game wasn't because there were 14 combined penalties, that's when you're going to start to see the Jets maybe have some more issues against a team that can score better at 5-on-5. So, I mean, I think it's a function of the guys that are out of the lineup. We know who those 3 guys are. It's a function of that, but it's also a function of some of the players. Some of the lines have to be producing more offense at 5-on-5. And like I said, the Taves, Iafallo, Chibrikov line was better last night. I think they can obviously still be better. But Nemesnikov, Niederreiter, Nyquist, like that line, they've had varying degrees of success. I thought, against on that Eastern Conference road trip, when they played the Islanders and the Philadelphia Flyers, I thought that line was a little bit more effective. I realized the line wasn't necessarily, they were jumbled a little bit. That line hasn't been together necessarily for all 8 games, right? But I just think that, you need more from the second and third lines is what I'm saying. And at 5-on-5, yes, it's nice to get power play goals, and the Jets obviously want to have a top power play again in this league, but the majority of the game is going to be played at 5-on-5. The majority of games are not like they were yesterday, where you've got that many penalties, right? So there's some concern for me. And Perfetti's still going to be out for another 2 or 3 weeks. So it's not like Perfetti's coming back tomorrow against the Utah Mammoth. They've got to find ways to create more offense, spend more time in the opposing team's zone. And
so let me ask you this question.
That should help the Jets and alleviate, like, let's be honest here. These last 3 games have not been great. They didn't score any goals in the first 2 periods on the road against Calgary, one of the worst teams in the league. Obviously, they lost to Seattle. And then yesterday, the first period was not very good. It wasn't until maybe late in the first period, in the second period, when they started to play better. So, this game tomorrow, I think, it's a measuring stick game for sure.
Well, I mean, 6-2, both teams are. The Mammoth play tonight in Minnesota against the Wild, so we'll see where their record is coming into tomorrow night's game. They're the team. Both teams are in 3-4 night. The difference is the Mammoth are in the second half of a back-to-back. The Jets, technically, there is a very, very optional skate this afternoon, I think around noon. The expectation is that very, very few players will take that skate, if any. There's no obligation for them to be at the rink tonight, especially given the earlier start time tomorrow. But of course, stranger things have happened. We'll see who ends up taking the skate. That information will be available later this afternoon on illegalcurve.com, assuming Dave gets his rabies shot by then. So given what we talked about and given the injuries, is this something that, 32nd in the league, they might not be a top 5 possession team when you've played your first 10% of the season and you've been at the bottom, but once the Jets get back to full health, and it's not imminently around the corner, but it's probably within the next few weeks. Certainly with Lowry, we know he's been skating in the non-contact jersey. Dylan Samberg, we know similarly is probably a couple weeks away, and then Cole Perfetti, the same thing. Let's suggest by U.S. Thanksgiving. That's always the benchmark that everyone uses, which is about a month from now. Do you think that the Jets metrics, forget about the wins and losses, but the metrics, once they're back to full health, do you think that the metrics will also improve as a result? Or do you think that they're going to be sort of one of these teams that outperforms some of their expected goals for and some of their possession numbers for the majority of the season?
Right. Well, then you're talking about the Jets from 3 or 4 years ago, right? Which relied too heavily on Connor Hellebuck. So, I mean, you hope that these numbers get better. I mean, they can't get any worse. They're at the bottom of the league right now. And yes, it is a small sample size. It's only 8 games, but I mean, it's still 8 games. Like you said, that's almost 10% of the season, right? So like, we're not talking about just the first couple of games here. So, I think obviously getting Adam Lowry back in the lineup, and like Scott Arniel said yesterday, until he's skating in a contact jersey, then we'll know that he's going to be coming back imminently. But obviously he's the one that should be coming back. The November 1st game against Pittsburgh was kind of the game we were thinking he might be back by, but it'll be
next
around
Saturday,
there.
by the way. That's right around the corner.
Right. So maybe that's a little bit early, but I think it's safe to say the first week of November is when we're expecting Lowry to come back, right? So that's obviously going to help the 5-on-5 game. And Dylan Samberg will obviously help the 5-on-5 game as well. Just moving the puck, and we know how good of a shutdown defenseman he is, right? So, I mean, and Cole Perfetti obviously solidifying that second line. So that's going to help. But in the meantime, kind of to my point earlier, I mean, these guys are still a few weeks away. So, I mean, the Jets have to pick up the slack while these guys are out of the lineup. And yes, I mean, you've got a little bit of a mishmash of lines here. Like I like Taves, Iafallo, Chibrikov. I think for now, based on what the Jets have, I like that line better than having Lambert on that line.
I like Taves and Iafallo together. I mean, that seems to be those are 2 veteran guys who have absolutely done it all in this league. There's nothing that they haven't done. There's nothing that they haven't seen. So those 2 guys and their hockey IQ is through the roof. I mean, and that's something I've talked about really since the start of training camp, is that the Jets, I think a lot of their success will come as a result of them being smarter on the ice than a lot of the other teams that they play against. I mean, there's something to be said for rep after rep after rep. The old Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours philosophy. Well, the Jets have way more than 10,000 hours with some of their veteran players and the things that they've done in this league. So Taves and Iafallo together, I think, will be positive for both of them, because they're both such intelligent players who can, what they lack in foot speed, they can smart their way around the ice, and use that as leverage to gain an advantage on their opponent. Who is going to be next to them? That continues to be a moving target for Scott Arniel, because nobody has really been able to step up and grab that role and squeeze it. I mean, it seems like most everybody is almost holding on to that role, or keeping it warm until Cole Perfetti comes into that spot would be my estimation at this point.
Right. And ultimately what it comes down to is whether we're talking about the top line of Scheifele, Connor, Valardi, whether we're talking about the N cubed line, as you like to call it, Drew, with Nemesnikov, Nyquist, and Niederreiter, whether it's the Taves line, whether it's the Barron line. You want these lines to be possession positive, but you want to have consecutive shifts where you're sustaining pressure in the offensive zone. And that's been a staple of the Jets team. Like the Jets have been a great defensive team, but the staple of this Jets team, at least from watching this team, let's say in the Rick Bowness / Scott O'Neill era, is the pressure and the wave after wave of offense, the speed and everything like that, right? So I think that's something that we haven't really seen a ton of through 8 games of the season. Maybe we saw that. I'd look at that, the Islanders game, the Flyers game, more so.
Two bad teams. I mean, those are 2 bad teams you're playing. But I would agree, the Flyers game in particular was, especially in that third period, where it was a close game entering that third period. Then the Jets just demoralized Philadelphia for the final 20 minutes by not letting them out of their own zone. Right,
exactly. And so with this lineup, and I hate to repeat myself, but because you're not getting Perfetti and Sandberg back for at least 2 to 3 weeks, let's say.
Yeah.
And you're possibly not getting Lowry back for a couple of weeks. Like, this is your lineup right now. And so you've got to find ways to sustain more offense. I think one sign that I've really liked, I mean, obviously Josh Morrissey was spectacular yesterday with his hat trick of assists. He's been jumping up into the play more. I think Neil Pionk, what did he have? 8 or 9 shot attempts yesterday. I like how he's shooting the puck. Like, obviously that's something
and
too.
That huge shot block as well, which
huge shot block. Yeah, he's playing well. Obviously we've talked about Logan Stanley. He's already got 2 goals on the season. He had the good dangle. I forget who was that against Calgary 2 games ago, or was that against Seattle? I forget.
Well, but he did the toe drag against Seattle that almost led to a goal. Didn't, but he got close to that, and then in Calgary
And what I'm trying to say is he's showing confidence with the puck. So the Jets are starting to get a little bit more offense from the defense. That's going to help. But I really think it's a matter of finding ways to spend more time in the offensive zone, sustain more pressure, and sometimes get those ugly goals. Like, I look at a line like the N cubed line, right? Like, that's a talented line, but that's the type of line that you're not going to get a ton of goals off the rush. Like, you're going to have to get into offensive zone, cycle the puck, high to low. We hear Kevin Sawyer talk about that all the time on the TSN broadcast. Like, they're going to have to find ways to create more offense and sustain more pressure at 5-on-5. And I think they will. But right now, it is going back to your original question, Drew, it's a little bit of a concern for me because, if the power play was just average and the penalty kill was just average, the Jets could easily be, 3-5 as opposed to 6-2, right? They're depending heavily on the power play and penalty kill, and they're obviously getting really good goaltending, including last night. I thought, Comrie, what did he stop? 30 of 33. I didn't think any of the goals were really his fault, and I thought he was really good. I mentioned those couple saves that he made on it was Coronado and Connor Zary there in the second period when the Flames were down. I forget if they were down a goal or 2 goals at that point.
3-2 at that point, I think.
Yeah, it was 3-2, right?
He kept them it so that they had the lead still.
Right. So Comrie's been solid. So I mean, at the end of the day, what we're saying, Drew, is that the Jets need to have a little bit of an explosion at 5-on-5. We haven't really. I mean, obviously, the Jets scored 4 goals in the first game. One of them, I believe, was a power play goal. But aside from that, I mean, you're talking about you're getting like, on average, like 1 even strength goal a game or 2 even strength goals a game.
Like I said on last night's post game show, the Jets got 5 goals, and that's great, and you can't take those goals away from them. But of those 5 goals, only 1 came at 5-on-5. The Connor goal was 4-on-4. They had the 2 power play goals. They had the Taves goal was the 5-on-5 goal off that set play off the faceoff, and then the 5-on-6 goal with the empty net from Vlad Nemesnikov. So I mean, again, these are good problems to have. Let's not get carried away and pretend that we're saying that the sky is falling, but we're just giving you the full picture of where the Winnipeg Jets are at, in that they are, and those who are analytically bent, and again, there's room for all the arguments, and we certainly respect that. But those who are analytically bent would say what the Jets are doing is not sustainable. That's just simply the fact. They're PDO, the Winnipeg Jets PDO, and PDO usually gets as close to 100 or 1, depending on how you at the end of the year. The Jets PDO right now is 1036. I mean, so 103.6, if you will. So most experts would say that number is going to regress to the mean, the mean being 100. So, the Jets can continue to outperform that. Not to say that it's immediately going to regress, but at some point in time, I think from the Jets' perspective and the organization's perspective, they would hope that the return of Adam Lowry, be that next week or within the next couple of weeks, the return of Cole Perfetti, be that within the next 3 to 4 weeks, and the return of Dylan Sandberg within the next 3 to 4 weeks, we'll start to see the Jets 5-on-5 play improve. Because I think most everyone would say it probably is not sustainable for 82 games straight that you are largely getting caved in at 5-on-5 and yet still able to perform and be victorious on the in the standings page.
Right. And these numbers are important, right? Like, I think, the old eye test would match up with those numbers, right? Like especially these last 3 games, right? Like we talked about, not including the Nashville game or the 2 road games in Philly or Long Island. These last 3 games, like, they just haven't been creating a ton of offense at 5-on-5. That's just a reality. It's not to say that they won't create more offense tomorrow against Utah. It's just, we're pointing these things out where.
Well, to your point about Utah, though, Ezzy, Utah is right now, I would say that they are playing the best hockey of any team the Jets have faced this year. I mean, the Jets, Dallas looked great in that first game of the season, but Dallas since then has really only been average. They're 3-3-1, so far this year. So they've been decidedly average. I think everyone would expect Dallas to improve. But, the Mammoth at 6-2 and even the Kraken at 4-2-2, those are probably the 2 best performing teams the Jets have faced so far this season. Utah is they're a different team than we were used to saying. And remember last year when the Jets went to Utah, I think it was that Monday night game, and the Jets got absolutely shellacked. It was just a bad performance from start to finish by the Winnipeg Jets. And Scott Arniel sort of read the team the riot act a little bit, if you remember that. That was probably in January of last year. I think if I recall correctly, it was the same night as the U.S. College Football National Championship game. If my brain is still functioning properly, this Mammoth team is a good hockey team. If the Jets don't, I would argue even elevate their game from how it's been as of late, they're probably not going to be successful tomorrow night against the Utah Mammoth. Utah demands you to be at your at one of your best levels so far this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've mentioned this before. The biggest thing is, even though Sean Durzee's out of the lineup again, I think it's a minor injury, but they've got John Marino back. He's healthy. Nate Schmidt has been playing, I think, on the second pair.
Yes,
so they've got a solid D group there, and they've obviously got a lot of good, talented young forwards, and we'll get into them more with Cole Bagley. But I mean, this is a good team. They were a good team last year. Now they were a
good team who ran into the injury bug, especially on their back end last year.
Yeah, they did, and obviously, it's not guaranteed they're going to make the playoffs in that division, because obviously Vegas and Edmonton most likely are going to be at the top of that division, but it's going to demand the Jets to play better at 5-on-5. Going back to what we were saying
Utah's in the same division as the Jets, Ezzy.
Sorry?
Utah's in the same division as the Jets.
What did I say?
You said Vegas and you're talking about Vegas and Edmonton, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you think of them as a sort of a West Coast based team. I guess.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, I did pick. Yeah, sorry. A little bit. We're doing so many shows through. I'm starting to forget what the divisions are. Yeah. But I picked Utah to make the playoffs. Obviously, my predictions mean absolutely F all. But I think highly of them, and I know that other people picked them to make the playoffs, and that's because they're well coached with Andre Tourigny. Obviously, everybody remembers him from the World Junior team.
Yeah.
And he's done a great job in Utah. And, we'll see, you look at the lineup, JJ Peterka, I was talking about that in the offseason. I really like that acquisition. That just gives them another weapon on the wing there. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I said measuring stick game. Maybe that's a bit of an overstatement, but the Jets know, look, there's no secrets out there. The Jets know the Utah Mammoth are a good team. They know they're not the Calgary Flames. All due respect to the Calgary Flames, that's not a very good team, and they're going to have to elevate their play. And I think another thing I wanted to mention is I want to see a solid 3-period effort tonight. Like, I don't want to see 2 good periods and 1 bad period. That's something that I think we've seen too much of early on in the season. Is that a function of the injuries? Is that a function of the crappy teams they've been playing? Maybe.
I mean, you're always going to see blips in the midst of a period. There's going to be a 2 or a 3 or a 4 minute, period of a period, or a segment of the period where the opposition is more successful than you are. No question about it. But your point is exactly right. I mean, you look at the first period last night against Calgary. Calgary was the better team. You look at the entirety of the game against Seattle. A lot of that game, Seattle was by far the better team. You don't want it to be a 20-minute period of bad hockey. You want it to be a 3 or 4 or maybe a 5-minute period of bad hockey, and then you tilt the ice in your favor again. Something that the Jets, I think I would agree with you, have had too many lengthy stretches of time where they haven't been able to, sort of take control of the game or mitigate what the opponent is doing.
Absolutely. And the Utah Mammoth are a speedy little team. So this is going to be a skating game. I don't think this is going to be like, let's be honest, last night was a grinder between the Jets and the Flames. It was just,
there's no Adam Klapka sized guy on Utah for the most part.
Yeah, no, there's no Adam Klapka sized guys on most teams, Drew. He's 6'8". He's like the only guy bigger than Logan Stanley in the league. But yeah, they're going to have to be good. And I think they will be better. I think, there's no reason to think that the Jets will continue to play this way. I mean, it's just they've got Minnesota coming up. Like Minnesota's obviously a division rival, right? So we'll see what they can do. But right now they're just too reliant on the specialty teams.
I would agree with you. I would agree wholeheartedly with everything you had to say about that. It's just where the Jets are at right now happens to be driven heavily by their special teams and their good goaltending and things of that nature. I see Dan Robertson is backstage. If Dan's ready to go, give me a thumbs up, Dan. He's given us a thumbs up, so we will bring in the Winnipeg Jets broadcaster, Jets on TSN, our good friend Dan Robertson, supporting the Padres of all teams.
Interesting.
What's the connection to the Padres, Dan?
Zero. When I was a kid growing up in Nova Scotia, I loved the logo, loved the colors. You could not get this cap anywhere back then. Obviously, you're not going to order it on Amazon. So, they went through many iterations, and I liked a lot of their colors and their color schemes and logos. But when they came out with this again, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, I had to have one. So basically, that's my Padres story. I've got a Mariners cap down there too that I wear a lot that I like, but I thought people might not like that because the Jays just went up against them in the playoffs.
Yeah. You're also Remus is a Mariners fan, so you might want to avoid that entirely. You don't want to be associated with them at all in that front. Just word to the wise on that one.
I will burn that cap.
Thank you. That's the only appropriate. That's the only appropriate reaction, Dan. Dan Robertson, Jets on TSN broadcaster. Good morning. Thank you for waking up bright and early. You worked late last night. We worked late last night. I guess let's start with last night's contest. Penalty filled. Not the cleanest of hockey games that you've ever broadcast, I would imagine. But yet again, the Jets, as Ezzy and I were talking about so far this morning, find a way to pull out the victory. Despite there being some times where they weren't necessarily at their best, I would say last night.
Yeah, still early season hockey, and I think we've seen teams across the league, maybe not everyone, but trying to find their true identity. I was just glad that it wasn't like the Kraken game. I mean, you're not always going to have a diamond, but man, that was tough to watch, right? And that for the Kraken and what they were trying to do, that's exactly what they wanted to do. And I think Calgary probably wanted to try to do the same thing too. But yeah, it was interesting. I mean, they got up by 2, and I thought, well, they're going to blow the Flames away. Just because, imagine being the Flames right now. It's been such a tough go for them, and they get behind again. So I was kind of impressed by the fact that the Flames fought back, as they should, but they have to be pretty dispirited right now. But as far as the Jets go, it was pretty neat. I mean, Morrissey, he's been fine all along, I think. But offensively, you're kind of waiting for a little bit of a burst, and we got it in the second period. I mean, he walked around Mackenzie Weegar. He made him look like a peewee defenseman. It was kind of an odd play by Weegar, the way he went at Morrissey. I mean, if you're going to go with a guy like Josh, chances are you're going to get stepped around like that. But he's a treat to watch every night, and he really helped drive things. So in the end, it wasn't perfect. There was too many penalties on both sides, but they did what they had to do.
It really was. We were talking about it on our post-game show last night, Dan. It's like I think Weegar's approach to that was so bizarre because we've seen Josh do some fancy footwork at the blue line where he's in a phone booth, and this was Weegar is a charging bull, and Morrissey just goes around him like the matador Olay and walks in. It was just for a guy who's really typically defensively stable, putting by Mackenzie Weegar, that was a real bizarre play that then really provided the Jets with a catalyst after another sleepy first period.
It reminded me of a play, and I couldn't tell you when it was, but it was when I called Canadians games, and Philippe Danault went from end to end here and scored, and he went around Dustin Byfuglien at the blue line, and I thought, what is Byfuglien doing? It was kind of the same thing, but it was an odd approach by Uyghur. I mean, I'm no expert or anything like that, but there was no angling involved. He just kind of went at him, and that's the wrong guy to do that to. As you mentioned, we've seen that so many times with him, and there is Diamond Dave Manouk.
Yes, well, welcome back, Dave Manouk, who did get his rabies shot and is no longer being afflicted by the raccoon bite that he was suffering from for the first 30 minutes of this morning's show. So, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, Dan, you're probably better off that way. In any event, Dave, welcome to the program. Glad you're feeling a little bit better.
Thank you. The throat was bothering me a little bit this morning, but I'm good.
Well,
I couldn't miss Dan Robertson's appearance, so I had to be on here.
Well, you're a good man, Dave.
Dan, with somebody who's got the dulcet tones like you do, who speaks for a living. Do you have a routine? Do is there a ginkgo biloba infused tea or anything that you use to keep the pipes all soft and supple?
Well, there probably should be. To be honest with you, it's funny. There's a couple of times now my voice goes. There's a couple.
Way to go,
times,
Drew.
Yeah, there you go. A couple of times a year, it gets me a little bit, and it's doing the World Championships and then starting the season. So we do the Worlds, and I guess I've done it twice in a row now. But this past year, it was you start, I think, on a Thursday or a Wednesday. There's 2 games a day. There's 2 games, then 2 games, then 3, then 3, then 2. So you're just holding that your voice holds out. And actually, I think when Connor scored last night, it kind of strained something a little bit. It's not quite where it should be yet. It's funny, but when I start the exhibition season, it's sore, right? It takes a while, but no, I should find some sort of an elixir on the line. I'm sure everybody has something or somebody would have something that might work, but luckily it hangs in there for me for the most part. As long as the raccoon doesn't bite me, I'm good.
For this show, Dan, I just drink a lot of Fireball. That's what I do. Every morning I wake up and I just drink a lot of Fireball, and that seems to help my voice. So,
sponsorship opportunity.
They were a sponsor, Dan. Don't worry.
Oh.
Yeah, I drank them out of business, so that's what actually happened. But, no, Dan, wanted to ask you about Johnny Taves. Obviously, you mentioned Josh Morrissey yesterday, who had the 3 assists, and we were just gushing over Morrissey's play yesterday. And just a beautiful assist to Johnny Taves. He's got 4 points now in his last 3 games, 2 goals. He obviously scored his first as a Jet at home. Do you have any idea why Calgary challenged that goal? Because we were scratching our heads. We aside from taking away Taves' first goal in Winnipeg, we couldn't really figure out what they were seeing there.
Yeah, just the overhead view. I thought maybe they thought Taves' skate got hooked up with Wolf's left leg, and you know what? It's funny, Kevin. He thought it was going to be called back. I sort of did too. I never say what I think because I'm always wrong. So that's it. I mean, I'm sure we've talked about it. Everybody talks about it, that there's always gray area there. And I find it really a crapshoot. You don't know what they're going to call it. It's certainly, there wasn't a lot there if there was any contact, but I guess they were thinking it was a pivotal play, and it was. I mean, they need every little break they can get. So I didn't know what they would call it, but fortunately the Jets fans got a chance to cheer the goal twice for Taves.
And just one more question on that line, because obviously Nikita Chibrikov is on that line. They had Brad Lambert on that line. It seemed to me like that line, I'm not going to say just started to click, because obviously Taves has found some chemistry with Iafallo, but I just wanted to get your opinion if you think that Chibrikov is a better fit there, because my kind of thinking was Chibrikov will remain in the lineup against Utah.
He's a scrappier player, more of an inside player than Lambert is. And we heard Arneal talk about the fact after the Kraken game that we have to get to the interior a little more. And that's not a rap on Brad. I think that's just something he's going to have to learn to do a little better. I don't think anyone expects him to be a hard-nosed player who's going to play necessarily in front of the net or in the corners, but he has to add that to his game, I think. And Chibrikov, Kevin pointed it out during the broadcast, there was a pivotal play or two that he made in the middle of the period that really helped the Jets get going. And I said it too, and Dave would know obviously a lot better than I would about Chibrikov. I don't know if we'll see him for any prolonged time with the Jets, because they will eventually get healthy, and when Lowry and Perfetti come back, then you would think he'd be bumped back down to the Moose. But I want to see him at some point just evolve as an NHLer. I wonder what they have in him. I don't know that the numbers will ever be huge, but he's got kind of an agitator factor to him. Maybe that's not the right term, but I think he helps get things going and jumpstart things. And it's got to be cool for him, right, to play in a line with Jonathan Taves and even Iafallo, guys who've been around. So I like what I see from him. I think you have to kind of watch closely to appreciate the finer points of his game.
Dan, every time you're on the show, I think I ask you about the Atlantic Province bias, but Morgan Barron, got to ask you about him, because through these 8 games so far, he has looked really good. It looks like he's taken a big step in his career. What have you seen from him so far this season?
Confidence and more, I don't know if direct play is the right thing to say, but I asked Arniel about Morgan yesterday morning, because I liked what I saw from him, especially in the third period against the Kraken when they were looking for some energy. Mm-hmm. He seems to be a guy who's figured out who he is and realizes, I'm 6'4" and I can really skate well and drive the puck up the ice and do a good job defensively. I think that's what it is. He's been a late bloomer. I mean, he was not a high draft pick. He's never been a high scorer anywhere, and I don't think he ever will be. But I'd actually like to see him get more minutes. I think, I want to see put him where Nemesnikov is and maybe flip that for a while just to see if that would make a difference. I know. And that's not to rip on Nemesnikov, who can do everything, but Vlad's probably better with the puck. But, Barron, I think he's kind of earned more ice time. In the Kraken game, that was the second fewest minutes he played, except for the opener against Dallas. And I know, too, it's tough kind of to get guys in when there's a lot of penalties going, even though Morgan kills penalties. But that's what it is, I think. I don't know what his offensive upside is. I don't think it's great, but he can help establish the Jets in a lot of offensive zone time, and I think that's what it is. I think you can see confidence in certain people. I can see it in Logan Stanley as of late, and I can see it in Barron. Just there's no hesitancy in his decision making, and I do like what I see from him.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about. Is Logan Stanley? You mentioned him in that answer about Morgan Barron, and it's not perfect with Logan, and it's never going to be. He's playing above where he typically would be playing. He's a third pairing defenseman, and every third pairing defenseman in this league is going to have some warts. But he does seem to be playing, at least from my perspective, just with a more confident approach on the ice. I guess the question for you would be, you just said something similar from your vantage point. What do you see has changed, vis-a-vis Logan Stanley that sort of maybe gives him that confidence? It wasn't that long ago that this is a guy who was getting booed, when he cost Connor Hellebuck, or the perception was that he cost Connor Hellebuck a shutout. Now they're chanting his name. So it's amazing what time can do.
Yeah, really. I know there was a play last night where he kind of threw it to center and turned it over, and those things will happen. I'm not trying to lead with a negative. I think it is a confidence thing. Again, you've seen him be a little more sure in his own zone. He initiated a fight with Klapka, or they get into it early, and Logan was probably trying to get his team to have a little bit more jump. I think that's what it is. And this is cliche, and it kind of applies to more people than Logan Stanley, but when there are injuries, and I talked to Arniel about this in Calgary, you don't want to see a Sandberg go out for sure. But if you're Logan Stanley, you think, okay, now I can settle in at least for a little bit, play a lot, or play more than probably I would if Sandberg was in, if I was going to play at all. So maybe that's it. Maybe they told him to just, play your game and settle in. We know what you can do and stick to your strengths. So it's good. Just the human side of it. I know that he takes a lot of heat, right? And for a lot of reasons, you're a first round pick and things don't pan out necessarily, at least yet, the way that fans would hope. But I like seeing it. Logan's a great kid. Nice to be around and all that sort of thing. But from the hockey side, I think that's it. He's just trying to keep things simple. It's nice to see him. He's never going to be a mean player, but he's laid the body on a couple of guys here early in the season. And who would he hit? He hit Zegras in Philadelphia, and I think Zegras said, okay, that's enough for me. I don't really want to play much the rest of the game. So I think when he can do things like that, he's a real asset.
Dan, obviously Gabe Valardi got the monkey off of his back yesterday, scored the power play goal, and we were talking about it on our post-game show. Like, the assist to Iafallo on the power play was just ridiculous. It was just another example of how good his hands are. But is this not just a good sign because of the way it'll help his play at 5-on-5? We've talked about it for a good portion of the first half an hour of the show. The Jets 5-on-5 play still, not where it needs to be. But I feel like with Valardi getting a goal and an assist, getting his confidence up, that's only going to help him at even strength.
Yeah, I agree. And he said yesterday before the game and after the morning skate that if I was going, Kyle and Mark would have 20 points each right now. And he's an interesting cat, right? He's hard on himself. And Dave saw it. Ken Weeb asked him a question. He kind of said, well, what do you think? He's really cool that way. But it's funny.
All players should have to riff on Weber a little bit before each game. I think it should be a new tradition.
Good luck charm, right?
Roast Weber a little bit.
And I think Kenny'd be okay with that for some strange reason. But when he scored the goal, I mean, if you didn't know he hadn't scored, I think he had 2 goals in his last 30 games going back through with the playoffs too. Wow. But if you didn't know that, you would realize by the look in his face that something kind of special just happened, that he had that relief, and it opened things up for him. I mean, he was much more effective. He has to work harder, I think, at 5-on-5. He has to work as hard as he does when they're on the power play. And it's funny. I mean, he hadn't been horrible, but when you saw what he did last night, when he scored the goal, and afterward, you're thinking, okay, that's the Valardi that we've come to know and that the Jets really need. So yeah, 5-on-5 play, obviously it's something they need to improve on, and he can really help that. It's funny, like teams know he's going to get that, I say, down on the low post on the power play. He's going to get that puck at the goal post, and they'll collapse on him. But still, if you give him an inch, he's able to do some pretty special things. And just, again, the human side of it, I was glad for him to just be able to breathe a little bit and finally get a goal and an assist in that win last night.
Well, Dan, you mentioned guys, talking to the media and what a boon it is to their careers, clearly, because Alex Iafallo spoke with us yesterday morning as well. And then he, of course, scored a big goal for the Jets on the power play. So from your perspective, for a guy like that, how do you, he just seems to be so universal. It's almost like he's underappreciated, but at the same time, he is very much appreciated, if that makes sense, just because of what he's able to bring to this team.
And before he ever came here, he was a guy I'd look at the numbers and think, okay, who is this guy? Like, he was never drafted. He's not big. He's going to maybe get 15 to maybe around 20 goals, something like that. So who is this guy? And then he's another player that when you watch, you appreciate the nuances of his game. And he's another guy that is benefiting from an injury, right? With Perfetti out, he gets a chance on that power play. And that's where he does he does it at 5-on-5 as well, but he retrieves pucks and he moves around when they get set up and can be in the bumper spot. Like, he's really smart and can knock pucks down. He's got good hands where he can just get pucks and so he's able to retrieve them in tight spaces. So, I would think he's a guy that if you spoke with any of the forwards who've had a chance to play with him, they would appreciate what he does. And that's kind of who he is, right? He's quiet. He's unassuming. We all know, I think he'd rather be up in a mountain or on a surfboard maybe rather than on the ice, although he obviously loves what he does. But yeah, and we were talking about it last night after the game, a couple of friends and I, and they were saying, who did the Jets get in that Pierre-Luc Dubois trade? And so we broke that down again, and it just kind of keeps giving.
The team.
Yeah, no, it's true, right? And yeah, it's what happens when Perfetti comes back. I'm sure he'll go to that first power play unit, and then bump Alex down to the second power play unit, and that'll help them a little bit. So he's very useful.
Yeah, they certainly are. Certainly a very useful player. Dan Robertson, Jets on TSN broadcaster, is our guest this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Dan, the PK, he gave up a goal last night, which is rare. 94% success rate, still atop the NHL. It's just amazing to think about where this team would be if the PK was just, even if it was 10th in the league, how significant a difference it would be in terms of their record and the win-loss standings if it wasn't for the PK success as it is. Why do you think it's succeeding to the degree that it is so far?
Well, before I get to that, it's kind of neat how last year the power play came raging out of the gate, right? And stayed at a pretty high level last year. And right now it's Dean Chenoweth's penalty kill that's doing it. I mentioned it during the broadcast. I said to Kevin, they have so many options to put over the boards. It's got to feel great for Arneal and Chenoweth. And he said, there's 9 forwards who can get out there and be part of the penalty kill. So I like that. You can just kind of, whoever you throw over the boards, they have good faith in them. I asked Arneal that question, why the penalty kill has been so good. And I always remember years ago. It was actually 2014-15 when Carey Price won the Hart Trophy in Montreal. I would ask Michel Therrien, who was not the friendliest human being in the world and probably still is not. I would say, Michel, I always got like a 5-minute interview with him as a rights holder before the game, and it was the last thing I wanted to do. And I would say, why is the penalty kill so good? And he'd say, Carey Price. So now I look at it sometimes, and it's, the great goaltending. I guess that's my long way around of saying that when you have a Hellebuck or even a Comrie when he's on, that really helps a lot. But I think it's guys who just know their job, right? And it's kind of cool too now that we're seeing Connor and Scheifele get integrated a little bit into the penalty kill. That's gives the other team kind of pause for thought. Those guys are out there and they can pounce on you in a heartbeat. But it's a lot of it's superstars like that, or stars, or whatever you want to call them, and role players who all seem to be really dialed in. So it's hard. Like, I'd like to say it would be neat to sit down with Dean Chenault and see, maybe give you some trade secrets and maybe shine some light on him and give him some love, because he's obviously doing a good job directing it. But they just have so many players who seem to really know what they're doing, and that obviously helps.
Dan, you mentioned Eric Comrie there, and I think you'd agree he was really solid last night. It's not necessarily a game everyone's going to remember and say that Comrie stole the show or anything like that, but stopped 30 of 33 shots and obviously picked up the shutout against the Islanders, so he's off to a 2-0 start. This is something we obviously talk about every single year, but if Comrie continues to play like this, do you see the Jets maybe playing Hellebuck a little bit less? I think I might know your answer, but considering it's an Olympic year and we expect Hellebuck to play most of the games for Team USA, like, do you see that changing, or do you think Hellebuck's going to still be right around 60 games?
I hope he's not, to be honest with you. It's especially, and you hit on it with the Olympics coming. I think they're going to try and pare it down a little bit. They have to, I believe. I don't know if fatigue was part of what happened with him in the playoffs last year, maybe probably more of a mental block than anything. But it's the more I think about it, and this isn't to discredit the regular season, because you have to play well, you have to make the playoffs. But we know that they want to hit their best when the playoffs come around. And if you can have a fresher Hellebuck, then do it. Now, we all know that he wants to play every game. I mean, I guess that's kind of, say it facetiously, but he wants to be in between the pipes. And how do you say no to the Hart Trophy winner? But again, none of us know a lot about goaltending, I wouldn't think, but I think we all know enough to know that when your goaltender is rested mentally and physically, that's a big deal. So I don't know what that number would be. And I don't know if I asked Wade Flaherty if he would say what number he expects, or what number, because they have a plan, right? I'm sure they've looked at the schedule many times and thought, okay, we'll start Eric here and here and here. You mentioned that game on Long Island where he was really good early on Thanksgiving Monday and helped the Jets stay in. And speaking of Comrie, so I didn't necessarily, wouldn't say I was surprised that he played, but I like seeing that where you get him in more than just on the second of back-to-backs. We'll see this week. They're at Minnesota on Tuesday, and then Chicago and Pittsburgh are here. So he needs to get one of those games. So I'd love to see it get under 60 games. I don't know if you can say, okay, well, he played 58. There's the magic number. Now we're going to win the Stanley Cup. He's going to be better. But I really do. I think, and if you think about it, that Olympic thing, how many games will he play? Obviously, it has a lot to do with how far the United States goes and just the way they deploy their goaltenders. But I think it's only a good thing if they somehow are able to convince him that he needs to get his games down.
Hey, Dan, only one goalie in the last 15 years has won the Stanley Cup playing more than 60 games. So they would
really?
Yeah. Do you remember? Any guesses as to who it was?
I would say Vasilevsky, but I don't know.
No, close. I think Vasilevsky played 58, but Jonathan Quick 1 year played.
Wow.
I think he played like 67 games back in the day. But other than him, nobody else. So they would
That's
be
a great stat.
Yeah. So
please steal it and don't give Dave one drop of credit for doing so. We won't be able to deal with him if you do.
I'll say that you told me. That'll really throw him off.
Now you're talking. Now you're talking.
Dan, speaking of Olympics, and as he mentioned that in his last question to you, but what do you think Doug Armstrong being in the building might have had any sort of impact that might have had on Josh Morrissey or Mark Scheifele? They showed well, especially Josh Morrissey in yesterday's game. But do you think that has an impact on players? I mean, I'm asking you to explain what they're thinking, but just from your perspective, do you think they know that he was there, and do you think that maybe impacts their level of play in the game?
I don't think they knew he was there for the Kraken game. They knew he was there last night, and I don't think it impacts how they play. I think they're just going to play their game. And, you know, I mean, obviously somewhere they clearly want to make the Olympic team, and they have at the back of their mind that he's there, but I don't think it's going to change their approach or anything like that. And I actually asked Kevin during the broadcast, and I'd love to get your guys' opinion on this. I mean, he's in the crowd. I'm thinking, well, really, like, how many times do you need to see Mark Scheifele, or how many times do you need to see Josh Morrissey? They played 11 times last year. What are you looking for? Kevin gave me a really good answer. He said, well, maybe it's some stuff you don't see when you're watching the game on TV. Maybe some, you know, stops and starts defensively in your own zone. Do you go for a big skate, or do you slam the brakes on if you're Scheifele and try and, you know, stay with your check a little more? Little nuances like that. But still, I wonder, like, okay, Doug Armstrong knows right now what Mark Scheifele's done.
Maybe he was here to see Johnny Taves. I mean,
well, that's true.
You know?
or Stanley, perhaps, as we mentioned. So you never know. But no, I honestly, I don't think it would impact the way their approach. I can see why you would ask. And I had to ask Kevin. I kind of put him on the spot, but I thought, do they not know right now who is going to be on that team? Maybe they don't. I don't know.
By and large, you think they would. I would agree with you there. Dan Robertson, Jets on TSN broadcaster, is our guest on this Saturday morning edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Dan, you got the Utah Mammoth coming to town tomorrow. We all have the Utah Mammoth coming to town. Second half of a back-to-back. They play in St. Paul tonight. A team that is certainly... the Jets have had some troubles with them. We remember that game last year. I think it was a Monday night in Utah that the Jets got manhandled by them. And the Mammoth are 6-2 to start the season. So they're certainly one of those upstart teams that are looking to maybe steal a playoff berth that a lot of people maybe saw the upside of them, but weren't necessarily ready to anoint them as a playoff team. Ginsburg did, to credit to him so far on that front. But
it's 8 games into the season, Drew. Let's not get too excited.
I'm going to give you it's not every day I can give you credit for anything. So I'm going to take advantage of those days and give you
Dan,
credit.
by the way, I also picked the Flames to make the playoffs. So
not sure about that one.
Yeah. My question, Dan, is sort of what are you expecting from this Utah team? You know, a team that we, played the Jets pretty hard last year at times.
Yeah, I haven't really had that chance. I saw part of a game so far, and I'm going to watch tonight's game, which of course is against the World Series. But I might start at 5 o'clock though.
5 o'clock, you can watch both. You're fine.
Yeah, excellent. So we'll do that. Like I said to Kevin on air too, that's just what the Central Division needs, right? Is another good team. So it's kind of the sign of a team that's kind of growing together under, I know you guys mentioned Andre Tourigny earlier. I'm really glad that when he was in Arizona and now in Utah, that they've stuck with him, where, you know, they went through some hard times, but they knew they would because they were so young. But it's an interesting team for me. And I think maybe the polar opposite from what we saw from the Kraken on Friday. Maybe this team will come and try and set the pace. So it's a good test for the Jets. There's a lot to like. That was a pretty fascinating trade, the Peterka for Doan and Kesselring. So Peterka, when he's on, can add some offense. And, you know, Keller kind of quietly, I guess it was 2 years ago, had 90 points, right? I mean, and Cooley had the hat trick the other day, I believe. So I don't know if they're ready to supplant a team in the West and make the playoffs, but it's a game I'm really looking forward to. I look forward to all of them, but this one I've kind of thought about it and said, okay, they're going to maybe try and put the Jets on their heels a little bit if they can. And it's funny, you remember that game last year in Salt Lake City where they gave it to the Jets. I think that maybe that stands out because there were so few of those games for the Jets, right? So it was even then you could kind of look at them and be in that building and think there's something, I don't know, special growing here, but there's with great ownership and the changes he's made and just the attention to detail that he has. I'm sure it's fun to be part of that franchise. So it'll be kind of neat to watch and see how they do against the Wild tonight, and a chance for us to study both teams because the Wild will be hosting the Jets on Tuesday. So 2 for the price of 1, I guess.
Dan, just wanted to ask you about that third pair, because obviously Colin Miller got into the lineup yesterday, replacing Luke Shen. Colin Miller's only been, I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, he's only been in 2 of the first 8 games this year. He only played 8 minutes, which was obviously because of the fact that there were, remind everybody that number, 14 power plays yesterday, which was just incredible. But are you expecting Colin Miller to stay in the lineup tomorrow versus Utah?
No, not for anything Colin did or didn't do, but I don't know if you want to sit Shen twice in a row, I don't know how he would take that. I say no, and I hadn't thought of it, but that's something that you wonder, will they kind of rotate those guys the rest of the way, and are they okay with it? I mean, Miller's kind of assumed that role where he's not in all the time. He's a little more mobile, we know, than Luke is, so maybe it depends on who the opposition is on any given night. So yeah, but Miller's a little more mobile than Shannon. Maybe against a quick team, he'll be in there. And it's funny, right? You go your whole career, and here's Miller, a guy, I think he's played 574 games. It's somewhere like that. And it has to be difficult when you get to a point where you're kind of the seventh guy and you have to bide your time. Maybe the playoffs come and you're not in there, and mentally you have to stay in the best possible frame of mind to be able to be a good teammate. And then when you get in there, you have to kind of make sure you don't try to do too much. You're not going to get a lot of minutes, so just kind of keep it simple. But it's kind of something that bears watching for the rest of the season. And then we all know too, they've got Salamonson down and with the Moose, right shot D. Will he get a look sometime this year? And those are kind of the smaller picture things for the Jets, but it's one worth keeping an eye on, I think.
Well, Dan, a bigger picture thing is that the Jets have gone through October and they're 6-2. And they did that without Adam Lowry, without Dylan Sandberg, and without Cole Perfetti. Well, we know, having seen Adam Lowry skating in a yellow non-contact, that he's getting closer. I asked, obviously, Scott O'Neill yesterday in our availability with him, what are kind of the next steps to seeing him, in the lineup? His answer kind of gave me the sense that, because remember, the target was November 1st. I'm kind of getting the sense that maybe Adam's not quite there yet, which would be that Pittsburgh game. I'm thinking maybe more of that West Coast road trip was maybe where we'll see him, because of course they're in a position where they don't need to rush him. So what are your sort of thoughts, having watched him skate, like I said, in the yellow non-contact?
I think they'll just lean on Adam and his honesty to get a good gauge for how he feels. And obviously it's what did Arnie say, that I didn't think about this before, but faceoffs had bothered him prior to the surgery, right? And the battles afterwards. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting perspective, but I think that's it. And he has to get up to speed conditioning wise. So, we know he's a guy that he's an honest person, speaking of Adam, and but he's got to be hungry to get back in there, right? Whether they're 6-2 or 2-6, he wants to play. So I don't know. I think it's once he gets into some contact drills and practice, maybe we'll get a better idea. But as you said, there's really no reason to hurry. And then I think we all kind of look forward to seeing, when they have their healthy lineup, what the line combinations and D pairings will look like. And, there's a lot of depth there. So, but it's, and then, will it be, I know I'm getting away from your question, but will Nemesnikov be bumped to a wing? I would think so when Adam comes back. But yeah, it'll be good to see him back, right? I mean, you've got a couple then really defensive, maybe three strong defensive centermen, and four, I guess, if you count Scheifele. But if you look at Taves and Lowry, there's a lot of veteran know-how down the middle of the ice. So yeah, they won't rush him. We know that.
Last one for you, Dan. Those of us, were watching the game last night, watching you and Kevin on Jets on TSN, had the luxury of also flipping, to the baseball game when they need to catch, what's going on over there. As you're broadcasting the game and you're giving updates on what's happening, do you have a producer in your ear telling you what's happening, or you got maybe a little second screen on there in the booth as well to keep things abreast?
Well, I'm not smart enough to be able to watch a ball game and call a hockey game at the same time. So it was our producer, Kevin Pratt. So, and I made fun of our statistician, John Matheson, who's a big Jays fan. Yeah. He wasn't even watching the game, but I said on air, John's got two screens up here, and he kind of gives me this look, But what I really found amazing was when Barger hit that grand slam, there was a murmur in the crowd, and I knew something happened. So it gets louder in one pocket, louder than the other. And I'm thinking it's probably it is people on their phones, and they're maybe seeing the grand slam at different times, a little bit delays here and there. And finally, Kevin Pratt comes in my ear and says, Barger just did a grand slam. It's 9-2 or whatever it was. So, it's cool because obviously it's Sportsnet. It's our competitor, but we can't pretend that a huge thing in the country is going on. And we did the same thing during Game 7 when, I guess that was in Calgary, right? When they against Seattle. So yeah, it's really cool. it's whether you like baseball or not, or whether you're a big fan or just kind of a casual fan, it's kind of a fun time right now to be a sports fan. And I don't know what our numbers were last night going up against game one of the World Series, but yeah, whatever, you give your best anyway.
Well, you can kick up your feet and you don't have to second screen game 2 between the Jays and the Dodgers. And you said you're going to be watching the Mammoth and the Wild before that. So, Dan, we'll let you get on with your Saturday. Appreciate your time. Always appreciate your insight. Great catching up with you. Are you going to shave the goatee, go straight mustache for November? That's next week.
Well, somebody with the Jets staff said to me in Edmonton, he walked up and he said, just get rid of the beard. Just keep the Fu Manchu. I don't really like it. There's someone in my life who does like it. My daughter doesn't like it. She's very crafty with her message. She says, it's not that I dislike it, Deb. You look older with your goatee because there's gray hair in there and everything. So I might shave half like Bill Cottle, the old Seattle Mariners. Do you remember that back in the 80s? He showed up at work one time. He was kind of a zany left-hander, and he showed up. He had shaved half of his mustache, so he just had this half. So I don't know. Maybe I set a trend with that. I might give that a try.
We'll get Drew to do that as well, Dan.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. You do one side, I'll do the opposite side. We'll go on tour together.
Dan, you know how the Jets do the face mold in the during the intermission or during that contest where they merge two Jets faces. We'll merge you and Drew.
I don't think the world's not ready for that, Dave.
I don't think the screens can handle that. Dan, thank you so much. Have a great Saturday. We'll catch up again soon.
Okay, boys. Thank you.
Take care. There he goes. Dan Robertson, our great friend, Jets on TSN broadcaster.
I like the Fu Manchu on Dan.
You think it works? So that's okay. What does Dan's daughter know that in that case? As he likes it, so that's all that matters. Yeah, I can't unsee it now. Exactly right, Matt Hyman. We've gone commercial free for the first hour, so we'll pay some bills. We'll catch up. We'll talk more about the Jets. We'll talk more about the Jets and the Mammoth. And we're going to be joined by Cole Bagley, Mammoth reporter, in about 25 or so minutes' time. Saturday morning, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show continues. Don't go anywhere.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling sites instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre.
Boys, I've made an important life decision, and I need your support.
Oh, boy.
I've decided to get a grill.
You mean a barbecue grill for cooking? Like, that's not an important life decision, Ezzy.
No. A grill for my teeth.
A grill for your teeth? Do I even want to know why you're doing this?
It's simple, really. Every time I go to Holt Dental, I get treated so very well by Dr. John and his team that I need to keep finding additional reasons to go back. I rely on Holt Dental for all of my dental needs, and they do it all, from regular cleanings to cosmetic dentistry. Plus, they have free parking at their front door. And you know how much I love my convenient parking.
For all your dental needs, Illegal Curve recommends Holt Dental, conveniently located on Taylor Avenue near Grant Park Mall. For more information, visit them online at holtdental.ca. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Hour number 2 set to begin. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Glad that Dave is feeling a little bit better. Yeah, a little bit of tea to get the tickle out of your throat. Is that right?
Gotta fix that little tickle.
Yeah, you got to get rid of the tickle. The tickle's not paying rent. Get that tickle out of there. Glad to hear that you're back up and running for hour number 2 of the program. Big thanks to Dan Robertson for joining us. Always great to catch up with Dan. You know, it's funny you asked Dan about Adam Lowry, Dave, and I tend to agree with you that, you know, again, everyone sort of has been expecting that November 1st date. And I don't think it's off the table by any stretch of the imagination, but he's still wearing yellow, which means, of course, he's got to shed the yellow, get into a full practice, maybe 1 or 2 practices before he's ready to rejoin the Winnipeg Jets lineup. But I thought that the comment that Scott O'Neill said about the faceoffs was particularly interesting. And let me read this this is courtesy of you. You transcribed it on illegalcurve.com. Quote, what are the next steps? He's asked about the next steps in Adam Lowry's recovery. Quote, now he needs live contact. No surprise. He needs to get into those situations. I think you saw him yesterday taking face-offs, which he hasn't really done, which is a little bit different. Last year when he was hurt, the last couple of years really, it affected his hip. That was one area. Battles off draws. So it's nice to see him do that. He felt pretty good about that. So again, those are all sort of the signs that the Jets are trying to get Adam Lowry back into the lineup, and not back into the lineup at, let's say, 90% or 92%, but rather almost at a full 100% recovery from the offseason surgery, so that when he's back in, there's no limitations to him. There's no limitations to how the Jets can deploy him. We know how good Johnny Taves is in the face-off dot. Imagine you get a healthy Adam Lowry back to being able to really perform in the face-off circle as well. I think that would be a boon for the Winnipeg Jets, certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, that one first, Dave. You were there for Neil's comments.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's why I asked the question, because I was curious to see what his next steps were, right? Because if you look at, especially if you look at the Jets' schedule, they have 3 and 4. It's an optional today, so I'm sure Lowry's either going to skate with the players in a non-contact, although it might sound like there's 5 people on the ice, probably just the healthy scratches from yesterday. Mm-hmm. And then you have, because of course there's no skate tomorrow. So if you look at it, it's an optional today, no skate tomorrow. Monday's probably a travel day, so probably nothing on Monday. Then they skate in St. Paul.
They might do a quick practice on Monday. I wouldn't be surprised about that.
I don't know. With 3 and 4, Drew, there's a good chance that Monday's just a travel day would be my guess. I could be wrong. We don't have access to the schedule. But I'm just saying the only reason I'm saying it is based on the way O'Neill responded. He essentially said, it's about getting him into these situations, but we're not really going to have that chance based on the way the games are. And then, of course, you've got the game on Tuesday. Wednesday, most likely they would be a practice day, and then Thursday's another game day. So you don't really have a huge amount of opportunities for him, but we'll see. And we'll see if it changes. It's entirely possible. I mean, the way I've watched him skate a number of times. His skating seems really good. He's doing a lot of kind of things that stress the hip in those skates he looks good. The only reason why I kind of went away from that target of November 1st of the Pittsburgh game was just because of O'Neill's answer, right? And again, we don't know. He could be like most coaches saying, I'm going to give myself a buffer. Mm-hmm. And then because he's obviously not going to want to pigeonhole himself and say, well, it's going to be November 1st. That's our target. We're sticking to it, because then we're just going to be asking him about it, as opposed to us waiting to see. Now we're waiting to see when Lowry switches the jersey. So I'm just saying it's interesting. But again, I'm of the opinion, why would you rush him back? You're 6-2. And your team's playing. I mean, again, you're not lights out by any stretch of the imagination, but you don't want to rush him back and have a setback.
No, I don't think you want to at all. And I think it's safe to say that when he comes back and everybody's kind of already, their mind is going there, right? Like, I think it's safe to say that he's probably going to replace Namestnikov, and he's going to play with Niederreiter and Nyquist, right, Dave? Maybe there's a different winger there, but I think it's safe to say that he's going to go back with his old pal Nino Niederreiter, right? And I think that's going to help the Jets 5-on-5, and that's obviously something we talked a lot about, Dave, before you jumped on with Dan Robertson. The Jets need to be better at 5-on-5. They need to be creating more offense at 5-on-5, and especially against a team like Utah, who's one of the top 5-on-5 teams, because this Utah team, and we'll talk to Cole Bagley about this, their special teams have not been great. They're 21st on the PP, 21st on the PK. So they've been doing a lot of their damage at even strength. Obviously, Adam Lowry's not going to be back for tomorrow's game against Utah, boys, but he is going to be back soon, and that's going to help. And I think, obviously, the return of Dylan Sandberg and the return of Cole Perfetti will help with that as well. But, they've got to dig deep here, because, this is a little bit harder of a part of the schedule with Utah coming up, and then you've got Minnesota, who always the thorn in the side of the Jets, right? Chicago's actually playing decent hockey for a team that he expects much out of, right? So you've got a lot of divisional games coming up right now, and you gotta put some wins together and start scoring some goals at 5-on-5.
What about the back end for tomorrow? We saw Colin Miller step in. He played limited minutes last night. Again, heavy special teams game, and Colin Miller is not going to get a lot of those minutes. He's probably the third option on the power play if they just ever have to use a third option for a defenseman on the power play. So what do you expect? Do you expect Luke Schenn to be back in the lineup, or do you think that Colin Miller gets another kick at the can against a speedier, smaller but a speedier Utah Mammoth team?
Before Dave gets in here, I'd really love to be a fly in the wall, when the Jets coaching group gets together and makes this decision, because I wonder how much of it is we want to get Luke Schenn back into the lineup versus the keeping Miller in because of the fact that Utah is a dynamic, fast team, right? Like, I think that there's a couple considerations there, because as Dan mentioned, Luke Schenn right now has been playing more. He's played 6 of 8 games, right? And Miller's only played 2 of 8 games. So I'm kind of leaning towards, this is just my opinion, I could be wrong. I've been wrong many times before, and I will continue to be wrong many times in the future. I think Miller's going to stay in the lineup, but I wouldn't be surprised if Schenn has been in the lineup, just because he's obviously played more games this year.
Well, if you take Miller out of the lineup, I tend to agree that I think Miller is going to be in the lineup as well, as he. If you take Miller out of the lineup after a game where he's only played 8 minutes, then there was some. He doesn't look great on the Backlund goal last
Nobody
night.
looks great on that goal.
Nobody looks great on the Backlund goal.
That was an ugly goal.
Great on it. But what have you really found out? What was the point of pulling Schenn and putting Miller in if you're giving him one game at 8 minutes, and that's it?
Well,
not to say that he's going to steal the job or anything, but you give Miller last night. The game flow, the game script sort of screwed up maybe what you expected in terms of time on ice. But if you yank him back out immediately, I just don't really get the point of it. I'd give him tomorrow against Utah, and then Luke Schenn. If you go back to Luke Schenn against a Minnesota team that's more physical than Utah is, to me that would make a little bit more sense than just doing the quick flip flop immediately, Dave.
No question. Especially if you're going to then run Schenn for consecutive games, because, like, you're right, Drew. It doesn't make sense from you need to if you're going to insist to have Schenn in the lineup, then you have to game manage him. There's no question about it at this point in his career. So I think that should be established. And the reality, if you're Scott Arniel, was you took one penalty against the Kraken, so you're like, okay, well, that's our new standard. We're going to be, because when he was asked about it, he said, something about, what are you going to, the penalty, I think it was me actually who asked him about the penalties and he was like, and he goes,
genius.
Yeah, some guy, real smart guy. But anyways, the point was that he was essentially said something like, we got to take less penalties.
Well, it's taking the 4th most minor penalties in the NHL at 37. For
sure. And yesterday, I think it was like for the team, I think it was about 18 or 19 minutes of penalties. I think I saw in the recap the team sent out. But the fact of the matter is that, I think to your point, Drew, is that this team they were probably thinking there would be a little bit more, not so much like the previous game against Calgary where there were so many power play opportunities. They were hoping it would be more like the Seattle model where you would be able to see more 5-on-5 against the Flames and give Colin Miller those minutes. So yeah, I agree. I tend to agree with you. Like, it seems very bizarre to pull the guy out. Again, I'm not suggesting he had some stellar game or anything like that, but you run him against the Utah, you give him more of an opportunity to play, 10, 11 minutes in that game. And then you've given Luke Schenn 4 days to kind of rest, get ready, and like you said, play a more physical game against a Wild team that brings that element more than Utah does. So to me, I keep Colin Miller in. And again, like I said, I'm not going to blame him for the Backlund goal solely because every single guy on that line had and D pair had a piece of that. So yeah, I would think you'd keep him in just to kind of continue. It's not about seeing what you got, because we know what you've got. We know what you have. You've got a very capable third pairing defenseman.
It's called load management. I mean, it's you don't need to run a guy, Luke Shen, for example, who's got lots of wear on his tread. You don't need to put him into situations where you're overplaying him because you have a capable backup. It's not like you're putting in a guy who doesn't belong at the NHL level when you're yanking Luke Shen out of the lineup. You're putting in a guy like Colin Miller, who's played a lot of games in this league and who would probably be, I think, would be considered one of the better seventh defensemen in the league when you really consider his pedigree and what he can accomplish when you insert him into the lineup. Worth noting, the Utah Mammoth right behind the Winnipeg Jets in terms of their minor penalties taken. The Jets have taken 37. The Mammoth have taken 36. So maybe it will be another parade to the penalty box like we've seen as of late, Ezzy.
How many of those penalties are Jack McBain, right? He takes a lot of penalties. Liam O'Brien is another guy that takes a lot of. He's a scrappy player on the Mammoth. Wanted to say, just kind of getting away from the defense for a second, because I think we all agree that we won't be shocked if Colin Miller stays in the lineup based on how many minutes he played last game, which is, what did we say, 8.5 minutes he was at, Colin Miller. So one thing to me that is maybe the best sign for this Jets team, who continues to struggle at 5-on-5, is the play of Johnny Taves. I really do think that. I'm not saying that Johnny Taves is going to have a hat trick or something like that against the Utah Mammoth, but 4 points, 2 goals in the last 3 games, and him and Iafallo, along with Chibrikov, I really think have starting to find some chemistry there, right, Dave? They've obviously only been together for a couple of games, but I really do think that line's got to have an impact, because we always expect Scheifele and Connor and Valardi to be dangerous on a nightly basis. Maybe we didn't. Maybe we've seen one game where they really didn't have it. That was the Seattle game, I would argue, where the Scheifele line and rest of the Jets team were stifled by that Kraken defense. But I think the fact that Taves is starting to produce at 5-on-5 and look a little bit more dangerous, I think is a really good sign for this Jets team.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. He does seem like we know what Johnny Taves is going to be, but he does seem to be getting more comfortable and more settled into his role, and just, rounding into form, I would suggest, is how I would describe it. Now, that's what the Winnipeg Jets want. I mean, I'll be honest, none of us knew what to expect from Johnny Taves when the Jets signed him and when he came back after all the years off, but so far, it seems like the risk has certainly been worthwhile from the Jets' perspective. He's been, especially the last few games. He's just, again, this is a guy who looks like he's getting around the ice better. His conditioning and game speed is improving as he's getting more and more miles sort of back under him, and everything else is, you can't replicate game speed no matter how much you try in training camp, no matter how much you try in the off season. So that it would always take some time. It's taken 3 weeks for him to ramp up. But again, I don't think that he looks out of place. He's not going to be the fastest player on the ice. We know that at this point of his career. But I would agree with you, Ezzy, that he certainly looks like he's capable of doing some good things for the Winnipeg Jets. Has done those good things already, and I think there's more yet to come from Johnny Taves as the season goes on, Dave.
Yeah, no, I mean, just the faceoffs alone, right, boys? I mean, I know that faceoffs, as Drew always says, is a controversial subject. I don't know why it is. To take possession of the puck is usually a pretty good thing. You want to have possession of the puck in hockey. Yeah. But I just think that he has given this team the assurance that he's not washed up, I guess. Because like you said, none of us knew what he looked like. And I was of the opinion, and on record, I guess, on the show, of saying, I don't think a guy like that comes back if he doesn't have something left in the tank. He's not coming back for the paycheck to tarnish his resume, to say, well, I put on the Jets jersey, but it didn't work out, but hey, at least I collected $5 million. The fact of the matter is that like I said, but none of us knew. Even the coaching staff didn't know. They had talked to people who, as Kevin Cheveldayoff told us in July when they announced it, they had talked to people that had watched him skate, I think, at the University of Arizona or something like that. So the fact of the matter is, you have a guy the only guy in this room who was an integral player in a championship, right? So, I mean, that's the difference between him and all the other guys. He wasn't a role player. He was the guy. He knows how to win. I'm not saying that, Tanner Pearson didn't play a role when he won a Stanley Cup. I'm not saying that Luke Shen didn't play a role when he won a Stanley Cup, but none of them played to the same level as Jonathan Taves. None of them are going to be able to give that assurance to guys like Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor when the playoffs, something gets tough. Here's a guy who's going to show you what to do and how to react. So I just think Adam Lowry, he's going to be able to teach these guys. I really think, again, his impact is going to be in April and potentially May and potentially in June. That is when you're going to see the true impact of a player like Jonathan Taves. But through 8 games, I mean, again, I remember I was couching it, boys, when we were talking about it, and I'd be like, well, I wouldn't get too worked up one way or the other until really we're looking at this in December, where you really given the guy a couple of months or basically 6 or 7 weeks to kind of, really regain everything. He's looking like he's getting back to it pretty quick, and it's only been 8 games.
Faster than I would have expected necessarily. By the way, he's leading the entire NHL in face-off winning percentage. He's taken 120 draws.
I was going to say, and he's taken like, yeah.
Well, he's one of the best face-off guys of all time.
Well, that's just it, and you're seeing it. I mean, he's, and I understand, the face-offs, the perspective. Well, it really only means that, you start with the puck one extra time, if you win 55% of the face-offs. Well, when you win 65, 70, 75% of the face-offs, like he did last night, I mean, you're starting with the puck a hell of a lot more.
It's because, Drew, as you guys know, I mean, you guys know advanced stats. The reason why the advanced stats community, I think, I don't know if you want to say pokes fun at face-offs.
Diminishes the importance of face-offs.
Diminishes the importance is because it's tough to directly correlate a face-off win. Well, no, I'm just saying, I mean, obviously, Drew, plays don't happen like that on every face-off. I'm saying, like, for the most part, it's tough to correlate a face-off win to a direct correlation to a play. Right, like that's the thing, because oftentimes guy wins a face-off and then maybe there's a shot and misses the net or whatever, right? Like that's why I think the advanced stats community takes the face-offs with a grain of salt. But I agree with Dave. You want to have the puck. Possession is the name of the game in the NHL. So you would rather win the face-off than lose the face-off, right? That's what it ultimately comes down to. And look, there's a lot smarter hockey people than me, like Scott Arniel says it's important. So if Scott Arniel says it's important, he was the runner-up for the Jack Adams Trophy. I'm gonna defer to Scott Arniel on this one.
Yeah, let me ask you about, we were talking about it with Dan when Dan Robertson was on with us in the last hour. He mentioned Morgan Barron's time on ice. Why do you think he's not getting sort of an increase in the time on ice? I think he's 9th among Winnipeg Jets forwards in time on ice per game played, which is lower than you would expect from a guy who I think has been, contributing to a very high degree. Is it just a function of, you think the coaching staff likes him in that role with Koepke and Pearson and they don't want to sort of rock the boat too much by maybe elevating him? Or do you think, it's just, to me, he's a guy that I think we've all said this, that you'd like to see more ice time for Morgan Barron. He's been that impactful for the Jets, but it doesn't seem to be actually translating into increased minutes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
No. I think we're going to say the same thing, right? We don't know. I mean, he does seem like a player that every single person you talk to thinks maybe there's more there. And there is, you're not going to, like when you're 9th in ice time, you could say, well, do with it what you can, but that's not easy. And look, if you, it's interesting because we've seen Vlad Namestnikov push down, right? We've seen him push down when there are guys available. Now he has the opportunity without those guys available, without Cole Perfetti, without Adam Lowry, to have that elevated role. But, truly the depth of this team is to have, Vlad Namestnikov on that 4th line. That's going to make you a deeper team. And, I can't speak to the team, and ultimately they're 6-2-0. Now their underlying metrics aren't great, but you have Connor Hellebuck. That always makes things better. I personally would be of an opinion to give Morgan Barron more ice time. I guess I can ask Scott Arniel that. I'd be like, Scott, we were talking about it on the Illegal Curve hockey show the other day. We really think you should be giving Morgan Barron more minutes. Why don't you? I can ask him. We'll see what he says.
Honestly, though, he's the one that has that answer. But I think based on
Tanner Pearson's playing more minutes at even strength, and I know Morgan Barron gets the penalty minutes, so he gets a lot of the work on the PK. But Tanner Pearson's playing more minutes at even strength than Morgan Barron is per game played so far this season.
I don't think it's that significant because he's on his line.
Well, it's 48 seconds more. I mean, it's not a huge amount, and
right,
it's
but they're on the same line, Drew. That's the point I'm trying to make here.
I know, but I'm surprised.
It's not like Tanner Pearson's being elevated. Honestly, probably the reason why is because Tanner Pearson, what did he play, Dave? 1 game on that second line or 2 games on that second line? So that maybe is where the increased ice time is coming from. But your point is well taken, Drew, in terms of maybe it's a function of the Jets coaching staff likes Morgan Barron so much centering that fourth line that they don't want to switch it up, right? Because the obvious switch would be he's not going to be, I don't think, I think that line of Taves, Iafallo, and Chibrikov is staying together. So really you're talking about, Barron centering Niederreiter and Nyquist, right?
When the Jets get back to full health up front, even when Lowry returns, could you see a position where Barron somehow gets moved up in the lineup now that they have maybe a surplus of, let's say, I'm going to use the word surplus, a surplus of centermen when Lowry returns?
Well, no, I think that would be even more reason for him to not be bumped up when Lowry returns, because then you've got Scheifele, Taves, Lowry as 1, 2, 3, or Scheifele, Lowry, Taves 1, 2, 3, right? Like I don't. If there's a time to elevate Barron, Drew, I think it's now.
Well, but I'm saying, could Barron move?
Lineup?
For a guy
the wing, basically.
I'm saying, could Barron move to the wing, or for a guy like Gus?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Who isn't really performing.
I really like him up the middle, though. I think you've seen him. You've seen different elements of his game when he's been up the middle, right? I really do like him. He's decent on faceoffs.
But would you rather have him as a 15-minute a game winger, or would you rather have him as a 10-minute a game centerman?
Yeah, no, I see where you're going with that. I think that there's some validity to that. I think it also has to do a little bit with how Gus Nyquist is playing. Like Gus Nyquist hasn't been great. Yeah. I'm putting a mile. I'm not saying he's been bad, but he hasn't not been great at 5-on-5. When you talk about 5-on-5, and if you're looking at who hasn't been great, I don't have the numbers. Maybe you can pull up the numbers through there. I was looking at them the other day. Nyquist has not been great. So I wonder if, he's a guy I think we all agree when Perfetti comes back, he's going to be playing with Taves. That's just, it's kind of common sense that he's going to be playing with Taves.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And who is the other guy on that line? Is it Iafallo, Taves, and Perfetti? Well, if that's the case, then, could you go with a third line of Niederreiter, and this is when Lowry's back.
Lowry, and Barron.
Exactly. And I have time for that. I think that could be a very interesting line, but it's very tough to say right now. You've got two regular top 9 forwards of the lineup. It's tough to say, once they come back, what's it going to all look like? But in the meantime, guys, we've talked about this already today. Lowry's not coming back tomorrow, so they've got to find ways, and that's up to Scott Arniel. And I wouldn't be surprised, Dave, if the Jets are struggling again at 5-on-5, if you don't see a move, and maybe that means Barron is elevated. Maybe that means Tanner Pearson is elevated. But like I said, right now it seems like the Jets really like deploying Barron as that fourth line center.
When we come back, we'll find out more about the Jets' opponent tomorrow, the Utah Mammoth. Cole Bagley, who covers the Mammoth for KSL Sports, he's going to join us on the program, making his Illegal Curve debut. Alongside Dave Minuk, alongside Ezra Ginsburg, I am your host, Drew Mandel. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I was going to say post-game show, but that's not quite yet. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by our friends at Play Now.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime. Visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre.
Boys, I've made an important life decision, and I need your support.
Oh, boy.
I've decided to get a grill.
You mean a barbecue grill for cooking? That's not an important life decision, Ezzy.
No. A grill for my teeth.
A grill for your teeth? Do I even want to know why you're doing this?
It's simple, really. Every time I go to Holt Dental, I get treated so very well by Dr. John and his team that I need to keep finding additional reasons to go back. I rely on Holt Dental for all of my dental needs, and they do it all, from regular cleanings to cosmetic dentistry. Plus, they have free parking at their front door, and you know how much I love my convenient parking.
For all your dental needs, Illegal Curve recommends Holt Dental, conveniently located on Taylor Avenue near Grant Park Mall. For more information, visit them online at holtdental.ca.
Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Bottom of hour number 2. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by our friends at Play Now, along with Dave Manouk, along with Ezra Ginsburg. I'm your host, Drew Mindell. We've been talking about the Winnipeg Jets since 9 o'clock Central Time this morning. We'll keep it going. And then, of course, tomorrow evening, after the Jets and the Utah Mammoth do battle, we'll have the Illegal Curve post-game show right around 7:40 p.m., give or take a couple of minutes on either side. To talk about the Utah Mammoth, we're pleased to welcome to the program from KSL Sports. He covers the Mammoth. Cole Bagley is our guest on the show. Cole, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to making your Illegal Curve debut this morning.
Yeah, thanks. How we doing, boys?
We're doing great, thank you. Obviously excited about the battle between the Jets and the Mammoth, two of the best teams so far this season in the Central Division. I'd say even overall in the entirety of the NHL. The Mammoth, of course, are in St. Paul to face the Wild tonight before they head up north to face the Jets tomorrow. You know, the success of the Mammoth. I think a lot of people thought the Mammoth were going to be better this year. Another year sort of under their belt in Utah, a little bit more comfortable after the hectic offseason that it was last year. From your perspective, what's driving the success of the Mammoth so far this season?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing right now is kind of the vision that Bill Armstrong had seen. You know, when he looked into his crystal ball over a few years ago, this is what he saw coming to fruition. They hit on some draft picks with guys like Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther. Obviously, they made a big trade for Mikhail Sergachev last offseason, and then this most recent offseason acquiring JJ Peterka. And so, it's hard to just point to one thing because so many different guys are playing incredibly well. But when you look at, the front six for Utah right now, you've got two of the top 6 lines in the NHL in terms of goals for, goals per 60 minutes, and a whole bunch of other areas. With Keller and Schmaltz's line, it's more of a finesse line. It's a line that's going to break you down, that's going to get into the offensive zone, that's going to move the puck. Barrett Hayton's kind of the glue that holds that line together. He's banging around in the crease area. And then Nick Schmaltz has been a very welcome surprise, I think, for the Mammoth. He leads the team in points. I believe he's 3rd in the NHL in points right now. So incredible production from the top line. And then on that second line, they kind of call it the kid line. You've got 3 players under the age of 23 in Peterka, Cooley, and Guenther, and they're flying right now. In a lot of, kind of key advanced statistical areas, they're number 2 in the NHL. They, for the most part, they just beat you with speed. Whether they're coming in, off the rush or they're moving the puck throughout the zone, they move so fast that at times it's kind of hard to keep up with. So that's kind of what's going on offensively. Defensively, when they went into the offseason this last summer, the biggest emphasis was getting deeper, wanting to avoid what happened to them a year ago where Dursey went down and Marino was injured longer than they anticipated, and they had to call in some depth. Well, this year, they went out and, they signed guys like Nate Schmidt. They signed Dmitry Simashev to his entry-level deal. And they've got a few other guys that they can count on in the AHL. They brought back Nick DeSimone. So, it's just a well-constructed roster. I don't know that we're seeing, the way that this team is going to play the entire year. I don't know that they're going to go 6 for every 8 games, but it's a lot of fun right now.
Cole, I wanted to ask you about Logan Cooley. He's a guy that I've talked to Drew and Dave a lot about over the last couple of years. This is his 3rd year. He had I don't know if you want to call it a breakout year last year, because he had a pretty good rookie year, but 25 goals, 65 points. I kind of feel like that went a little bit underappreciated across the NHL. I think you'd probably agree with that. I mean, this is a 3rd overall pick. He had a monster night the other night against the St. Louis Blues, a hat trick and an assist. What have you kind of seen so far out of Logan Cooley? Because obviously he had a little bit of a slow start offensively to the season.
Yeah, I think what can be attributed to that slow start is he's in a big contract year, right? And not only a big contract year, but uncharted territory. The cap is rising rapidly. And players like Logan Cooley are trying to make sure that their value stands the test of time. If they're going to sign an 8-year deal with the cap increasing by $25 million over the next few seasons, they want to make sure that value carries forward. And so, it's not a Logan Cooley issue. As his agent put it the other day, it's more of a league-wide issue that's causing the fact that he hasn't signed that extension yet. But I think that's been affecting him a little bit. When he came into media day, he told us, everyone in the room, he said, "Look, I'm not focused on the contract. That's from my agents. But what I am focused on is dominating this season." And, how can you not come into a new year where you supposedly turned down a $77 million contract and not be a little nervous and not, have kind of a monkey on your back? And so I think that's where he struggled a little bit through the first few games. But then, you guys witnessed what Cooley's really capable of the other night. He's a versatile player. He can play down low. He can battle in the crease. He can score goals from a distance. He can get set up in the slot. He can facilitate. I mean, 4 points in a single period and a natural hat trick. This kid's unbelievable. I truly believe that he's one of the brightest young stars in the National Hockey League. I think if you were to go back and redraft his class, he would definitely go 1st overall based on the way that he's performed. If you watch him closely, you kind of see a lot of the flashes of the players that he looked up to as a kid. You see a little Sidney Crosby, you see a little Patrick Kane, you see a little bit of Alexander Ovechkin in there, and he's exciting. And the craziest part, he's only 21. He's just going to continue to get better, and especially playing alongside the likes of Dylan Guenther and JJ Peterka. I think this is a kid that one day is going to be a top 10 player in the NHL.
Cole, it's going to be a little bit of a Jets reunion when you guys come to town on Sunday because of all the former Jets that are in the roster. Kevin Stenlund, of course, was there last year. Nate Schmidt and Brandon Tanev joining the Utah Mammoth this year. So what have you seen from those 2 additions this season?
Great additions. I mean, all 3 of them. Kevin Stenlund, I think, is one of the most underrated players on this roster, and that's because he plays on the 4th line. But he is just a true face-off specialist, a guy that wins nearly 60% of his draws. He plays on the power kill. He scores, a decent amount of goals. He's registering points. And then he's won critical face-offs late in games, whether that's, with under 5 minutes to go or in overtime. And, his contributions cannot be overlooked. In terms of Nate Schmidt and Brandon Tanev, they're doing exactly what they've been asked to do. I think Lawson Krause called Tanev the Energizer Bunny. That's just kind of the way that he plays. And I'd have to agree with that. He brings so much energy. He's not necessarily going to put up a whole bunch of points, right? But he's going to fly all over the ice. He's going to deliver punishing hits. He's going to be hard on the forecheck and the back check. And that's exactly what he's done. As for Nate Schmidt, I think another guy that maybe isn't as valued as he should be. He has, I think, raised the overall performance of Utah's defense. He's playing on the 2nd line. He's great on the breakouts. He's very intentional with his positioning and with his passing. And he's just been a lockdown defenseman. And so I think all 3 of those players have been a huge part of Utah's early success, even if it doesn't necessarily show up on the stat sheet.
Cole Bagley of KSL Sports is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Cole covers the Utah Mammoth. They'll be in Winnipeg tomorrow night to face the Jets. There's not very many trades in this league that make you say, whoa. But when the Mammoth, or at the time the Utah Hockey Club, acquired Mikhail Sergachev, that was sort of a whoa trade for a lot of people. He had a very solid year last year, 53 points in the 77 games. That's the second highest career point total, since he's broken into the NHL. What are you seeing from Mikhail Sergachev year number 2 on the Mammoth blue line?
Yeah, I'll share a quick story on Sergachev that I think really embodies what he means to this team. I was sitting down with Bill Armstrong a couple weeks ago, and he had shared that, when he was thinking of making that trade, he had a mentor. I'm not exactly sure who that mentor was, but mentor said, look, son, defensemen like this are not overly common. And not only are they not overly common, but the ability to trade for them is very rare. And so you need to go and make sure that you make that trade. And that's kind of what put him over the edge in terms of making that decision to go and get Mikhail Sergachev. And since he's come into Utah, he has been everything and more that this organization could have hoped for. Like you mentioned, he had an incredible season a year ago, not necessarily a career year in terms of numbers, but I would say a career year in terms of leadership, in terms of impact. It felt like he really transformed into a number one defenseman in the NHL a year ago. And coming into year 2, it's been a little bit of a slow start in terms of offensive contributions. But, he's started to rev things up a little bit. He's got a couple points under his belt. But defensively, he's just been an anchor. He's continued to be an anchor. He's, made big plays. That game against Colorado the other night, one of the biggest reasons that they won that game is because he locked down that top line. He played so good against McKinnon and Nietzsche, and just really led the way. And then it's been really fun to see him mentor Dmitry Simashev. They're currently Simashev lives in Sergachev's basement right now, and it's fun that they're two native countrymen. They've developed a really good relationship. It's kind of big brother, little brother, and some people might say, look, they're completely different players, but you're starting to see flashes of Sergachev's game in Simashev. I think the maturity of his game, the vision, and just how solid and reliable that both of those guys are. So, Sergachev's impact cannot be understated, not only on the stat sheet, but just as a leader. He embodies everything that you would want in a defensive anchor and in an alternate captain.
I was going to ask you about Dmitry Simashev, Cole, but you obviously just touched on him there, so I'll move on to a different player. I wanted to ask you about Olli Määttä, because he's obviously a guy who's been on several teams. He was most recently on Detroit, but he's been on LA, Chicago, and then he obviously started his career in Pittsburgh. What kind of impact is he having on this team, obviously, on the third pair? He's not a guy that obviously necessarily gets a lot of headlines, but how important is it to have him? And you can also incorporate Nate Schmidt, who's obviously got a Stanley Cup ring and hundreds of games of NHL experience, just to round out this group.
I think where the NHL has kind of transitioned a little bit is really valuing offensive defensemen. Guys like Kale McCarr, I think, are changing the game, but I think there's a mistake in not valuing just true defensive defenders, right? Like guys that, look, they're not going to show up on the offensive stat sheet far too often. They might finish with 10 to 15 points, a goal or an assist here and there. But what Määttä brings, and alongside guys like Nate Schmidt, is just reliable defense and veteran experience. He's not going to make very mistakes. He's going to be sound in his technique. He's going to help out in a lot of different ways. He's not going to make bad passes. He's good on the breakouts. He's helped in certain moments where other players have made mistakes. And so, this is how Utah, formerly Arizona, has really made the big step, the big change in terms of their progression, in terms of their rebuild is, when they hit the reset button, they had to build their youth program. They had to bring in a whole bunch of guys. They had to make draft picks. They had to develop guys like Clayton Keller, Lawson Krause. But what's made that difference is bringing in the Olli Maatas and the Ian Coles and the Nate Schmitz and the Kevin Stenlunds and the Mikhail Sergachevs, guys that have won Stanley Cups, know what it takes to get there, and have just kind of perfected their craft in a way.
Cole, it seems like the Utah Mammoth have been around forever. They've only been around, obviously, for a limited period of time. What's it been like? I mean, they're 4-0-0 right now in the start to this season at home. But just what's it been like in Utah this year, the excitement level amongst the fans and kind of the general excitement, just having a name, not being, as Ezzy said, the Utah Hockey Club anymore. Now they're actually the Utah Mammoth.
That's such a good question and a loaded question. I hope that I can do right and answer it in a way that really, depicts what's going on in Utah. So I grew up playing hockey in Utah. I was born and raised there. I got into hockey after the 2002 Winter Olympics. And hockey was just kind of a niche little thing. Not very many people talked about hockey, watched hockey, knew about hockey, and it was just kind of this small little group. But what's been unbelievable is the way that hockey has immediately spread. I mean, it's like a fire, and it is growing each and every day. As people come to games, people that have never watched hockey before, they're falling in love with it. And how can you not, right? Like the speed and the entertainment of the game is incredible. And I think too, the culture of hockey, I've covered a variety of sports, and hockey players are just the best. They're just regular dudes who love to play hockey, and they connect with the community in a way that I don't think very many other sports or athletes are able to. So that's made a huge difference. And as Utah now has a brand, you've seen that growth just explode. People everywhere, you go to the grocery store, you go to the restaurant, you walk on the street, you jump on, public transportation, you're seeing these Mammoth hats and uniforms and sweaters and jackets and everything. And everybody wants to talk about it. Everybody wants to ask, have you been to a Mammoth game yet? And I think they nailed it right on the head in terms of the branding. If you guys have looked at the new Mammoth logo, there's a lot of hidden Easter eggs about Utah. You've got the state logo outline. You've got the Wasatch Mountains right at the top. You've got the U tusk. They've done this very beautifully in terms of helping this team embody what it means to be native to Utah. And everyone's fallen in love with it, which is music to my ears. I think that within the next few seasons, Utah, the Mammoth could surpass the Jazz as kind of the team that everybody roots for. So it's been a lot of fun.
Karl Malone will not be happy to hear that.
That's okay with me.
Last one for you, Cole. The bench boss has been the same for the last number of years. So he's, he's grown alongside a lot of these players. Andre Tourigny is that, of course, who I'm talking about. Now that, I'm going to say there's expectations of, playoff success, or at least maybe a playoff berth, or being in the running for a playoff berth for this team. How is Andre Tourigny sort of adapted to those expectations and maybe embraced the challenge in a different environment than what he had to experience when they were the Coyotes, and then even last year with the adjustment period to moving to Utah?
Yeah, I have insane respect for any coach that gets, put in charge of a rebuild, because I feel like 9 times out of 10, you're not seeing it through, right? Like you're kind of the sacrificial lamb in a way, where you come in for a few years, you develop them, and even if things go well, it's hard to stay in that position. So, kudos to him for sticking it out, for witnessing growth. Every year that he's been in charge, they've won more games. And it feels like we're witnessing a little bit of a breakthrough for him right now, where I think before he was really good at player development. I think he's a huge reason that you've seen guys like Cooley and Gunther and even Keller and others on this roster really springboard into stars. And, this year, not to say he's on the hot seat, but it's a little bit of a pressure cooker. The pressure is turned up, not only in terms of the front office, but, the fans, the media, everyone's expecting this team to make the playoffs. And I'm sure he's feeling that. But to see what he's done through these first few games, those first 3 were a bit of a disaster. They were 1-2. They easily could have been 0-3. That game in Nashville, they really didn't deserve to win, but they pulled it out. But they flipped a switch, and I think he made some adjustments and also kind of just stuck to what they believed was going to start working. You know, early in the season, they were getting good chances, good shots. Pucks just weren't going in. Well, you know, they have a breakout game against San Jose, and suddenly they're scoring tons of goals every single night. I think they're averaging about 4.5 to 5 goals a night and only giving up about 2.5. And it's like, you're going to win a lot of hockey games that way. So, yeah, he's made a lot of progress. You know, we'll see how the season goes, but based on the way they're playing right now, yeah, I don't know that they're really a force to be reckoned with in the playoffs. I don't see this team necessarily going to the third round, let alone the second round, but they should make the playoffs. And I think if he's able to do that, you know, I don't see Utah really changing gears here. And we could see, you know, quite a few more years of Tourney at the helm.
Utah and Winnipeg aren't just close to each other in the alphabetical listing of NHL teams. They're close to each other in the Central Division standings as well. The Mammoth in town to face the Jets tomorrow night. It's going to be a good one. Cole Bagley covers the Utah Mammoth for KSL Sports. Cole, thanks for joining us. Impressive debut here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We look forward to doing it again with you real soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And, cheers. Enjoy the game.
Thanks, Cole. Be well. Enjoy. Thanks very much. There he goes, Cole Bagley, joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show to discuss the Mammoth. We come back take our last commercial break. We'll come back. We'll wrap the show. Look forward to tomorrow night in the Jets and the Mammoth, and of course the Illegal Curve post-game show as well. Drew Mandel, Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg. It's the Illegal Curve post-game show. Pardon me. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show is presented by our friends at Play Now. Too many shows as of late. My brain is turning to
Settle down, Drew.
I know. We'll be right back.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Center. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime. Visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Center.
Boys, I've made an important life decision, and I need your support.
Oh, boy.
I've decided to get a grill.
You mean a barbecue grill for cooking? Like, that's not an important life decision, Ezzy.
No. A grill for my teeth.
A grill for your teeth? Do I even want to know why you're doing this?
It's simple, really. Every time I go to Holt Dental, I get treated so very well by Dr. John and his team that I need to keep finding additional reasons to go back. I rely on Holt Dental for all of my dental needs, and they do it all, from regular cleanings to cosmetic dentistry. Plus, they have free parking at their front door, and you know how much I love my convenient parking.
For all your dental needs, Illegal Curve recommends Holt Dental, conveniently located on Taylor Avenue near Grant Park Mall. For more information, visit them online at holtdental.ca.
Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Another fun Saturday morning here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. 3 and 4 nights for the Jets, 4 and 4 nights for the Illegal Curve crew. We don't take no stinking days off, no rest days, no optionals. We go hard to the hole each and
Sleep
every
is for
time.
suckers anyways.
Sleep is for suckers, indeed. Exactly right. We'll be back tomorrow evening. Well, at least Dave and I will. I think, Ezzy, you said you're taking tomorrow off. We'll be back tomorrow evening with the Illegal Curve.
Hey, it's my mandated day off, guys. I get, as part of my contract with Illegal Curve, I get 1 day off a week mandated.
Yeah, it's true. You do. You're on a work release program, so sometimes we release you.
I'm
from work.
parenting. Just so you know, I'm not. It's not like I'm going to be.
That's the same thing as being in prison, Ezzy.
Yeah, it's true. Going to Boo at the Zoo tonight. I'm pretty pumped. I've never gone to Boo at the Zoo, so I'm not sure if anybody in the chat has gone. I know Drew's taking his kids, but I'm pretty pumped up.
Your kids will enjoy it. It's your kids are still a little
the
younger
only problem
than
is the only issue with it is when Ezzy ends up in the polar bear exhibit. That might be a bit of a problem.
Sir, this exhibit was closed. How did you get back over here?
No, even worse is when the polar bear looks at Ezzy and doesn't eat him. Instead, chooses just to lie down beside the other big bear.
Just cuddles up with him and thinks that you're a fellow.
This is my cousin, the grizzly. It's all good.
Yeah.
The last time I went there, all the bears were sleeping though. It was kind of disappointing.
Did you want them to put on a song and dance routine for you? What were
No,
you
I
expecting?
took my kids to, I think we went in like July, and no, we couldn't.
Well,
we didn't see any of
for a polar bear in July.
I was gonna say hot. Polar bears like to sleep in when it's hot. You know, they're not searching the ice for seals or Ginsbergs.
I remember a couple times ago, I think when we went to Boo at the Zoo, you know where you go to the restaurant, whatever the restaurant's called, and it overlooks the polar bear enclosure.
Drew's definitely in that restaurant getting a little cinnamon bun or something.
And the polar bears were literally like right next to the glass, and they were like playing. So that was pretty cool. So hopefully they won't be as sleepy as you are there, Sleepy Bear, and they'll entertain you and your kids tonight at Boo at the Zoo. That'll be something fun for you to look forward to. But remember, the candy is for the children, so stop hitting the kids and stealing their candy. That's bad form on your part.
It's funny you mentioned that. I brought one of those boxes at Superstore of like 100 pieces of candy.
Yeah,
the one with Kit Kat, Coffee Crisp, Arrow, and Smarties.
Yeah,
all that's left are the Smarties. All the other bars
Smarties.
are done.
I'll swing by. I love Smarties. I'll be there.
Honestly, you can have the Smarties. I'm not a big Smarties guy, but all the other I have to go buy. What I'm saying is I have to go buy more Halloween candy because I ate
that you're going to eat.
Yeah. Did you eat the candy or did the kids eat the candy?
No, I did.
Oh, definitely, Ezzy.
Yeah, no surprise.
I have a bit of a weight problem.
I don't subscribe to hygiene. Dave, what's wrong with the Moose? They can't score. Go quick.
Well, I mean, I can only go if Ezzy hits the button. You know, otherwise there's no. There's
Put
no
on
button,
your
there's no
antlers.
Moose talk.
It's time for the Minute Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
I got you, Dave.
You got my back. There I am. What's wrong with the Moose? They stink real bad. They are in a slide.
Hygiene problem.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, Grand Rapids is a very good team, so there is that. I think they might be undefeated this season. So the Grand Rapids Griffins are a good team. That's who they've played the last 3 games. That's who they've lost to the last 3 games. It was a 0-0 after 20 minutes in last night's game. Kind of hard to do. Watch the Moose, watch the Jets, and also watch the Jays. I was trying to do be a triple threat. Even for me, it was a little difficult, especially when things started to pick up because the Moose were 1 period ahead. They started an hour before. So I was able to watch the first, able to watch the second. And by the third, while they were already down 3-0, it was like, okay, and then the Jets started to do stuff. Then I was like, okay, well, the Moose game kind of went back into the fold until after the game so I could watch it. But it's just, hockey's a funny game. They're down 1-0. David Gustin has a great chance. Great save by Sebastian Cossa for the Griffins. And, shortly thereafter, Grand Rapids gets 2 goals in like 31 seconds and blows it open, and it's 3-0. And the Moose, again, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's wrong, but they just don't seem to have that level of connectivity. It's early. They've only played 5 games, so you're not really hitting that panic button quite yet. But it is a bit disconcerting because they have lost 4 straight. So they looked really good against Laval, look connected, not so much now. And again, it's not one player. It's the group is not playing connected hockey. So they have to figure some things out. They probably have to make some lineup adjustments. They won't have any time to kind of lament their lot in life because they're in Chicago to take on the Wolves. So we'll see if they can improve against Chicago. But yeah, I mean, it's it's not a panic button situation quite yet, but it's one of those situations where you need to kind of get back on track and get back to winning. So, the young guys are playing. That's the important thing. Barlow, Jagger, Zhilkin. So you're getting Salamonson. But the fact of the matter is you want, again, the whole talk before the season began was how good this roster was going to be. The concern, of course, was young goaltending still, and the defense wasn't fantastic, but you thought that they could outscore their problems. So they're not scoring to outscore their problems, and that's kind of an issue. So we'll see what they do against Chicago tonight. Maybe they'll get to be able to create those good feelings. And we'll let you know on a little site called legalcurve.com.
And thelegalcurve.com is, of course, your home for everything to do with the Winnipeg Jets and the Manitoba Moose. Our YouTube channel is an equally good resource as well. If you haven't already done so, be sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Turn your notifications on. Subscribe to the podcast. And be sure to join us tomorrow night after the Jets and the Mammoth for another edition of the Illegal Curve postgame show. And then join us again next Saturday morning for another edition of the Illegal Curve hockey show. Big thanks to all of our sponsors. They make this show, the postgame show, the website, a possibility. That's our friends, of course, at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. Erica Sigurdsson at Rumors Tonight. Limited tickets available, rumorscomedyclub.com. Our friends at Play Now, they're the title sponsor. Holt Dental, they got Ezzy grill for his teeth, not for his cooking. City Place, Wheatland Hockey, and, of course, Boston Pizza support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve hockey. Thanks all for joining us. Big thanks to Dan Robertson. Big thanks to Cole Bagley. If you missed any of the show, the instant replay is immediately available, and the podcast will be available shortly as well. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Whatever you're up to, do it responsibly. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.